Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com. Happy to be joined by our football analyst, William Gardner. And we're going to run through some notes that I've taken, and I want to get your reaction to a lot of these, William, of just this team getting acclimated. It's kind of getting used to new faces in this program, but also then you see Omari Miller and Cam Michael working out and being part of the strength and conditioning program. And that makes you pretty excited about that receivers room, because those are a couple important pieces for this team. And to see those guys stepping up and being able to participate is big, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if we going back to the larger point. I think that Coach Prime and the people in the program learned a lot that first year about the importance of team chemistry and togetherness and guys working together. And so you look at the videos and such in the weight room and on the conditioning field and everything that they're doing, and you see that again this year. So I think they're still putting a premium on guys that fit in the program and getting to know each other and spending time together. So I think it's also, that first year was rough too, because everybody was new except for just maybe a couple of guys that got held over. And so when you have more guys that have been here before, even if it's only 1 year and a couple of years for some of them now, I think it makes a big difference. And so guys start to fit in. But it's exciting to see all but one of the high school guys on campus already and working out. Sadly, the guy that needs it the most is the one that's not there, but that's the way it goes. But it's fun to see those guys there and see what they look like, and then to see some guys like Omari and Miller and Cam Michael getting in there. I think we've seen enough from both of them. I think we've seen enough from Omari and Miller to know that he could be one of the best receivers in the country, and certainly as good as any of the three guys last year at receiver. And if he stays healthy, he's really kind of one of those guys you can't cover. He's exciting. And then Cam Michael, we've seen enough of him to know that he's sort of a multi-purpose threat, and I think that they're going to use him in a lot of different ways. And he sort of has a lot of the sort of Travis Hunter-like sort of ability to make things happen in a more exciting way than your average player. So those two are exciting, and then we'll see everybody else come along too.
I remember talking to a national recruiting analyst when Cam Michael committed to Colorado, and he said, when Cam Michael is in college, he will step on the field and in most cases be the fastest man on that field. That was kind of his analysis of him. And you go back to his high school film, and he was playing a lot of just quarterback where they just snap it out to him out of the shotgun, and he would just start going downhill. And usually guys couldn't catch him. That's fun film to watch. I'm really anxious to see how he fits in. I'm still not ruling out a potential future as kind of a Draylon Miller type where he plays a little running back as well. I think he's got that skill set that he could do that as well. William, you and I go
I
ahead
thought I thought they did some of that last year with him a little bit.
with Draylon Miller, but yeah, Cam Michael was out all year.
Was he all year? What?
Yep,
Okay, I guess I was remembering something with him, and he was a true freshman last year.
correct. Yeah,
Hmm. I guess I'm confusing him with Miller, but go ahead.
yeah, they were very similar players, right? They were very versatile guys coming in, and Miller was the one that stayed healthy, but between him and Cam Michael, they were equally thought of coming out of high school, and so that's why when I saw Cam Michael running through some pregame snaps at the Alamo Bowl, I was like, I need to put his name out there and remind folks that this is a really good player that's going to be in Colorado's program healthy in 2025. William, you and I are going to go to the Hungry Toad here pretty soon. We're going to do our position by position Buff Stampede Radio. It's located at 2543 Broadway in Boulder. And I'm already dreaming about their chicken wings, their French onion soup. What are you going to order when we get back there?
I don't know. I have to look at the menu and see what's on what my palate is wanting on that particular day. They got a lot of different good things. So I don't know. Last time we ordered everything and tried them all, I guess.
We got a good sample last time we were there for sure, and it was all really good. Obviously, a very welcoming atmosphere there. They love their soccer, they love their football, they support the Buffs. Boulder's local pub that's not on Pearl Street, but it's pretty close. Again, 2543 Broadway in Boulder. All right, William, there has been some videos put out there by Reach the People Media, which has kind of given us an insight into some of these new guys that have come on campus, full off media as well. I wrote down a few notes. I'm kind of curious if you've had any takeaways. The first thing I want to start out with here is the Buffs again worked out with the Marine Corps, and you got to see Anquin Barnes carry Jaheim Otis at one point during that. And that was a lot of man right there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's close to 600 or 700 pounds of human right there.
Yeah.
It's funny in the notes to me, you said they worked out with the Navy SEALs, and this time you said the Marines, and so
I think it was the Marine Corps, right?
Yeah,
If I remember right.
Yeah, it was the Marine Corps, but I was like, we don't want to slight the Air Force and the Coast Guard, so leave it.
And yeah, the Navy SEALs have worked out with men's basketball, so it's kind of this common thing now to bring these guys in, and I think it really helps build team camaraderie. I know it's not an original idea at this point, but this is the time of year to get that muscle confusion going on, right? Where you do some drills where you're going to be sore the next day, but it's not going to affect your performance because you don't have a game coming up or practice. And it's a way to really kind of build some muscles. It's like you could spend 2 hours in the weight room every day, and then you go out to shovel the snow for the first time in Colorado. And it's like, man, there's some muscles there that I didn't know existed until I started doing that. I feel like these exercises kind of help with that beyond, just the team building side of things.
Well, I think the thing that's really, really of value, and I think we heard our strength and conditioning coach, what's our new guy's name?
Andrew Swayze.
And yeah, Coach Swayze talking about, and also from a couple of the Marine Corps leaders was really what it all comes down to more than anything else is mental toughness and will you quit under fire, and so to get that from in football is one thing, to get it from the military and really elite combat troops is an entirely different approach to it than sports. And so I think to expose them to that different kind of thing, and it was interesting that some of the female soldiers or Marines were there and working with them, and the point that was being made repeatedly was, if you're going to quit on me here, you're going to quit on me in the field. And that's even more important in a combat unit, because you got to really trust that guy with your life, and not just necessarily combat units, but like when I was in the Navy, I worked on the flight deck of a carrier, and if everybody wasn't paying attention and doing their job, we'd get killed. It was like working on the interstate. So I think that the mental part of it, I think what they pick up from that is that you can always go harder than you think you can go. And so when you get put in a position like that, where all your peers are around you and all these other people that you don't know are watching, you're pushed even harder, and nobody wants to quit and look bad and whatever. So I think that's a part of it too, is sort of, which is sort of the whole point of Marine Corps boot camp and SEAL training and things like that. It's always struck me that people talk about SEAL training, you find out who the toughest of the toughest is. That's not really accurate. What it boils down to, what everybody I've ever known in the SEALs, and I've known a lot of them, is that it comes down to who wants it the most and who it's the most important to. And at some point, in your life, you decide whether something's important enough for you to pay the price. And this level of football demands a high price, and it's not for everybody. And so good to find out at this point rather than, going to games and find out. So I think that's a big value of it as well.
I've noticed too with the guys that Coach Prime goes after from a recruiting standpoint, to kind of build off your point there of who wants it most. When I used to ask recruits what motivated them or what was kind of their why, you'd sometimes get hesitation with a lot of these guys that Colorado's offered in this 2026 class. And we'll get into that in our next show, previewing the regular signing period and getting in to the 2026 classes, that these guys don't have no hesitation. They know why they are driven as a football player. And it seems like that's a quality that Coach Prime is really attracted to.
Yeah, and I think that that's why that goes back. I think partly to the chemistry and getting the right people on board. And I think especially with the transfers, and we'll talk more about recruiting more guys out of high school. But the point is to get guys that come in that are bought in already to what you're looking for, that you don't have to try to teach them and sell it. So you're looking for those guys. And I guess the common parlance is dogs. And guys that are all you got to do is unleash the chain and know go run. Um, so I think that's important in what they're looking for. I think the hardest thing to evaluate in any recruit, and it's always been hard on offensive linemen because they have to work harder than anybody else, but is that desire and that work ethic, and can you, how do you look inside of a person and see what they've got in their heart for what they really want and how much do they really love this game. And the thing I've noticed over the last 20 years of watching different recruits is that uh, the guys who need the game, the guys who love the game, are the guys that are successful. So you take a Nate Landman, for example, and he needs the game, man. And it outweighs his raw talents to the extent that he performs better. And we've seen a lot of guys come in that are more highly rated than him, but the game's not as important to them. So I think trying to measure that kind of thing is difficult, but I think that Coach Prime and his staff is doing a pretty good job of it.
All of the high school signees and transfers expected to join the program are in the program, except for, I shouldn't say he was expected to, but all those guys are on campus. And Zane D'Souza, who we got to see at Loveland High School this past year, is playing basketball, actually having a nice basketball season for Loveland High. So you've really got the bulk of your football team on campus for spring ball for the first time of the Coach Prime era. We were talking earlier that first off season, you're talking about a group where you're having to weed out so many guys. You're kind of late behind the eight ball. Last off season, they improved on that, but you still had kind of this, I don't know, this undercurrent of guys that weren't quite bought in. That got flushed out for the most part by the time they got to preseason camp. This year, you've got a lot of new faces, but there's actually more stability. You just don't have Shador Sanders or Travis Hunter on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, we lost a lot of guys, and that goes back to the discussion we had before. Is that people say, how can you be better if you lose guys like them and Jimmy Horn and all the receivers or whatever, and that's the way it works, man. You get to be great because you have those players, and you stay great because you replace those players. And every team in the top 10 does it every single year. Guys go get drafted, and then you replace them somehow. So uh, that's what high level recruiting is all about. And again, going back to the mentality, it is almost as important as the talent. So you need guys that have confidence and sort of that mentality and that talent. So I think that it's exciting this year. I think I think just like the last 2 years, we'll see some significant in a different way. I don't know, not significant in terms of numbers, but we'll see changes after spring as well. And some guys will leave, and we'll bring in some new guys and fill some positions. And I mean significant in terms of, I think there will be some really good guys that we can still find after spring to fill out the roster and kind of fill that in. But I think for the most part, what we're looking at, I still think we'll probably wind up with a couple more offensive linemen. Beyond that, it's hard to say. But this is mostly what we're going to go with, and I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I think so. And I've got some other notes here. Do you have any takeaways from what you've seen from this team early on?
I don't
Heading
know.
into
It just looks like a lot of size. They're really huge in the lines, and looks like very athletic. And they got a really good competition between each other going. And we'll address some of that as we get down the list of things you sent me. But just I think that the chemistry between our strength coaches with the new coach addition looks good. Coach Mo seems to be comfortable with everything, and so those guys are all working good, and there just seems to be, they're working hard, but they're having fun with it. So I think that's a positive.
Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support, but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO?
Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full time hire. And here's the best part, it's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com.
RJ Johnson mentioned that he's playing cornerback right now. He wants to be the next Buff to earn a gray jersey, which in Colorado's program signifies that you're going both ways. We saw Tyler Brown get that last year, Isaiah Harge last year. Obviously, Travis Hunter had that during his whole time in Boulder. Interesting, RJ said as he was catching balls off the jugs when he was talking to Darius Sanders on Reach the People Media that he was a receiver and cornerback all the way up until he got to Arkansas. They tried to make him a safety. He wasn't really meshing with that. But so that's another guy that's going to be in that cornerback mix. Obviously, there's some other guys in that room that have got a bit of a leg up just in terms of experience and, kind of impressions they've made in this program. But, Johnson was on special teams last year. So you got another body, at least in that cornerbacks room now.
And I think you reminded me. You mentioned Isaiah Harge. I think that's who I was thinking of instead of Cam Michael as the other guy that we did some things out of the backfield with last.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Isaiah Harge is as versatile as they come. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew there was a second young guy, and I don't know why I got confused there, but yeah, I think R.J. Johnson and just like a lot of the guys, that Coach Prime has brought in, he's looking for guys that can play and are athletes, and R.J. Johnson's played safety, and now he's a cornerback and wide receiver, and at 6'2" and 180, he's certainly got the size to be outstanding at both, and so I think it's a positive for him. It's a positive for the team, but I think it's also a positive for recruiting that you can tell guys you come to CU and if you have the ability to do it, you'll get the opportunity to do it. And I think especially with the way last season played out with Travis Hunter and the Heisman and all of how much he played both directions and what a huge sort of national news story it is. A lot of guys are going to want to say, hey, I could do that. And I don't think any of them are going to be able to do that, what he did. But, everybody thinks they're the next, everybody thought they were Michael Jordan and they're not, but that's okay. You give them the opportunity and maybe one of them will be, but he's another guy. I think I begin to think like we're like the adjunct of the state of Georgia now with all these guys from that state coming up here, and he's another one.
Yeah. And I don't know, like you said, you can't expect a Travis Hunter to ever walk through that building again. But doesn't it feel like he kind of laid the foundation for this runway as long as Coach Prime's in Boulder for CU to be kind of two-way U?
Yeah, I think a lot of people on the national level will be watching to see if anybody else does anything like that at CU. And I think if we have somebody do that again this year, it sort of cements us as that place. It's still not something. I don't remember seeing anybody that was really going both ways anywhere else last year that did it enough or made enough of a mark for me to remember it. But if we have another one this year, and we got 2 or 3 guys who might do it, that we could get that sort of reputation, and I think that will draw a certain kind of athlete, certain kind of superior athlete. So it's kind of exciting, and plus let's get the best guys on the field, in whatever ways we can, guys with speed and we saw with Will Shepherd last year the advantage of that tall receiver out there. And speaking of which reminds me, I saw those photos from down at the Shrine Bowl. Is it the Shrine Bowl they're all at?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I really didn't understand. I didn't really realize how much bigger Shepherd is than Wester and Jimmy Horn until I saw them standing together. They're like, holy crap! They may look like midgets next to him. So that type of receiver is valuable to have,
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what he does with that.
Speaking of receivers, Terrell Timmons Jr. has seemed to step into a leadership role in that receivers room. A transfer from NC State last year, and he got a decent amount of run, and it wasn't a whole lot to write home about. But you like the message he's kind of sending this offseason in terms of it looks like that's a pretty motivated individual. Draylon Miller, same thing. Those guys seem to be really tight together, and they seem to have kind of taken ownership of that room, which is good. You've got a couple vocal leaders there, and then some other silent assassin types. I feel like in that room.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talent there, and Terrell Timmons is another one at 6'2" with that kind of height. He had a couple of catches last year, I think that I recall. But he showed at North Carolina State before he came here that he had that ability downfield and that matchup mismatch kind of thing going on. So you get a guy that's coming into his second. It's hard to be that guy that exert that kind of leadership when you're first year in the program. There's not a lot of guys that are Shane Cokes out there who come in from day one and take that leadership. And so you get a little more familiarity with where you are, and you've been here a while, and you're an older guy. And then part of it is, you can't be a leader on a football team unless you're a player on a football team. And that may be stupid, but what I mean is a player as in you have to produce in games and be near the top of the depth chart to really take on that leadership role. And with all the losses of wide receiver, it's kind of a wide open spot for people to make their mark. And so it makes sense to me that an older guy who's been around a little bit like Timmons would do that. I mean, so I'm excited to see what he can do. I think that just goes back to all the talent we have on this program. I think that I'm not sure everybody that's a Bolt CU fan really understands. And certainly outside of Boulder, they're going to think, we're going to drop off and not have talent, and they're wrong.
Yeah. No, that position is going to be just fine. We're going to get into our high school prep class signings draft in our next show. And there's three pretty talented receivers to look at from that group. So we'll talk more about them. And that's the guys that are joining an already pretty talented group. Jordan Seaton gets in his Maybach with Darius Sanders, and talks about how he hasn't really done anything yet, that he's super humble. That's the mentality you need when you've got those that type of vehicle that you're rolling around doing an interview in. And I think I've said it from day one that kid has the it factor.
Well, I think he has the right mentality, and I think he's right. He knows, he's seen enough of the game and enough. When you're on a team with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn Jr. and Wester and Shepard and guys like that, and you see what those guys did as seniors, and you look at yourself, no matter how good you did as a true freshman, you understand that I haven't done this yet. I'm not there, and I think he still understands he plays on the position that's widely viewed and correctly as the weak spot of the team. And I think they're getting sick and tired of hearing that. And I think that it's also it takes that first season for a tackle. He started and played every single game, every single snap, as I recall. But you need that time to really get settled into that role, and you come into the second. A year ago this time he was supposed to be in high school, and so you come into winter conditioning now, and it's a whole different ballgame because you got a whole year under your belt, and you've done everything once, and it makes a big damn difference. And he's seen the older guys and what the other teams have, and I think he's going to benefit tremendously from having some fifth year guys like Zarian McGill and Aki Okunbiyi and Zy Chrysler who have played at a high level with high level guys around him in that room, and have that sort of maturity, both physical. And I'll tell you something, people think, well, you look at Jordan Seaton and he's this specimen. He's going to look different in 4 years. He is not there physically. He is not there yet physically, which just goes to show you how high his ceiling is, because he was already one of the better left tackles in the conference. So, when he starts to build that physicality and builds that body that comes with being, an older guy, and get the testosterone going and whatever, he's going to be really something. But that humility will take him a long way, and that work ethic. And I think that's a very positive thing for him. And he's right. He hasn't done anything yet. To be honest with you, he started 12 games for a team with the year before a really bad offensive line, got better, and then this year they have to build something out of that, make something happen. So I think it's a good mentality for him to have.
I've got a few more notes here. You tell me if you want to touch on any of this further. Jeremiah Brown has put on some good weight. He's in there challenging running backs for over his speed, so he's feels like he's kept that speed. I got to give some credit to Ryan Staub for embracing competition. He's still on campus. He was talking with Darius Sanders about just being with that second team offense last year. It was interesting when he said Omarion Miller was in there. That was a guy you were going to look to. Draylen Miller was another go-to for him last year. Dallin Hayden is still with the program. There was some thought maybe he wouldn't be with them again in 2025, but he is still there. So he, Augustive, and Michael Welch are kind of the mainstays there. And then Brandon Hood, he's a speedster of that group. There's no question he's the fastest guy in that group. Any thoughts on any of that there?
Yeah, I got thoughts on everything. Whether they're worth a damn or not is up to information, I guess. But it's nice to see Jeremiah Brown. It's nice to see back, is what I mean. It's nice to see him back. It's nice to see him having the self confidence. And he's working hard, and obviously is a good athlete. And I really thought every time I've seen him out there playing, and I think he's more effective at the inside linebacker spots, based on how we run our defense, than the outside linebacker spot. So I hope that this is maybe his year to step up and do it. One thing I would tell people is you don't ever write a guy off. Eric McCarty played fullback for us for 3 years, and he didn't become a linebacker until his senior year, and he was first team All Big 8 at the position. So you just never know when a guy will step up into that spot and be the guy. And Jeremiah Brown's got everything he needs to be a successful linebacker, and he's done it well whenever he's like the spring game last year and what have you. But at the end of the day, he's got to do it. He's got to have that. He's got to be able to see the game and slow it down and make decisions and make those plays faster. He's not ever going to be the Nikai Hill-Green or who's our other starting inside backer?
Bentley.
Levante Bentley type of thumper sort of a linebacker. He's going to be better in space than either one of them in pass coverage and things like that. But I think he can be a very effective inside linebacker for us. And so I hope this is the year that comes. It's just nice to see him when you have that self-confidence. It makes it easier to be effective, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point about you don't give up a guy until his eligibility is up. And I got to hit reset on Dallin Hayden. We were critical, both of us. He just simply did not make guys miss this past season at this level. You've got to be able to do that. But there's skills there, and there's belief from the staff, and so it'd be a great redemption story this year. I certainly would love to see it.
Well, I'm going to go with Staub first, since you mentioned him first in order. But
Okay.
I think that he's another guy, and I guarantee you, if Ryan Staub wins the starting job, we're going to see people saying, "Oh my God, it's going to be a bad season if Ryan Staub's a quarterback." Well, that's a bunch of hokum. That's bullshit. That the guy can play the game, and just because he's not as heralded coming in as either Salter or Lewis, doesn't mean he's not a good quarterback. And he's been playing the spot, especially with this coordinator now for 2 seasons. And has shown a lot of ability to do a lot of good things. So it would not surprise me if Ryan Staub is very good at that spot this year, going into spring, given a shot to take that number 1 spot. So I don't think it's a downside. I don't think it would be a negative reflection on either of the other 2 guys at all. I think there's 3 guys in this quarterback competition, and I think they all have well, I'm not sure they all have an equal opportunity, but Staub is in terms of this offense, the experienced veteran of the group. Salter certainly has a lot more playing time in games. And then Lewis perhaps has more raw talent than any other 2. So we'll see how that all plays out. I just don't want people saying, "Oh, there's going to be 2 narratives if Staub wins it. It's that the other 2 guys aren't as good as advertised, and we're going to be no good because he's the quarterback. And I don't think either one of those are true.
Yeah, the tough thing for Staub is that he goes against the first team defense, and so you get some of those clips where he's getting picked off, and it's like, well, he's got the second team O line, the second team
Yeah.
receivers with him too. It's not just him being the second teamer out there against the first teamers. So there's a lot, and I thought he looked pretty good in that Utah game, but that's going back quite a ways. But maybe that's even a positive. The fact that you would assume that he's developed since then.
And I guess I'd like to ask people out there, how do you suppose the second team offensive line looked against our first team defensive line?
Not great. Yeah.
Yeah, not great. Holy cow! Imagine you're a quarterback and you're seeing Wankwell there, and it's like, somebody gonna block this guy? But and then going back to the running backs, there was one video when they were all arguing about each other with their speed, and I didn't watch the damn thing long enough to see if they ever actually raced. All I saw was a bunch of jawboning back and forth. And so I don't know if they actually raced.
Brandon Hood would win that race, trust me. If they lined up.
I can't remember who. I wasn't 100% sure. To be honest to God, it was just a bunch of guys standing around a weight room running their mouths. I couldn't tell who was saying they were faster than who, and the only thing I could take away from it is that man, Isaiah Augusto's a hell of a lot taller than the other guys, but and then Micah Welch is so thick too, that I think that all four of those guys are again going to give us a lot of different looks and different options at running back. And I do think I don't know what the outcome if they ever did race, but I think that Isaiah Augusto's got a lot more speed than people think he does. I think part of the back and forth, and I don't know, again, blah blah blah, yada yada. They were talking over each other, but I thought I understood somebody. If I understood this correctly, somebody was saying, "Well, he beat you off the start," which I took to be Hood, and then you'd beat him in the last 20 yards, which is what I took to mean Augusto, which he's not he's got speed when he gets going, maybe not the initial speed right off the bat, but I don't know.
Augusto did beat Jeremiah Brown in a race. They actually did that.
Yeah, well, I would hope, yeah.
But Brandon Hood is beating Augusto in a 40-yard dash, 100-yard dash. I can't wait to see what he can do going forward. You sent me an email early this past week. Let's close out with this week before we get into our recruiting show that we're going to be excited to put out there leading up to the regular signing period, which is going to be, it sounds like pretty quiet for the Buffs, but we can still kind of reflect a little bit on their high school recruiting efforts. You want to talk a little bit about NIL and just kind of how you view things. Where do you want to take this discussion, William?
Well, I think it's bigger than just NIL. I think it kind of borders on a lot of different things that people are talking about on the board, and whether it's with Coach Prime or the basketball program or whatever. And I guess I just saw a couple of comments that I wanted to respond to from people last week. One was somebody talking about the offensive line transfers, and one guy said he wasn't very excited, and the other guy said, well, it's like trying to buy a Benzes with a Ford budget. And I don't think that's accurate at all. First of all, I think they've brought in some pretty good offensive line transfers, and I don't think that first of all, I don't know how the hell anybody can calculate what anybody's got for an NIL budget, because there's no real definition of what the damn thing means. And how do you know where they're getting money or what money they're giving to what guys? But I think CU's got enough to be competitive, and I think, maybe we don't have what they have. Maybe you take the top 10 teams that have NIL, and maybe we're not one of those. But if you've got enough to be competitive and you've got a good recruiter, which we have a great recruiter, then you're going to be in the game, and quite frankly, as far as NIL budget goes, in the modern era, that's part of your job as a head coach, man. If you've got to help raise money, that's the way it goes. Build excitement, whatever. And I don't think that Coach Prime had any problem doing with that. Hell, half the people he knows are millionaires. And he's raised the excitement level. And so part of your job as coach is to get that money coming in from wherever it's coming from. And whether that's him or whether that's Tad Boyle or whether that's anybody else, in this modern day, unless you're at Oregon, I guess, and you got a sugar daddy, and then I guess you don't have to so much. But most places don't have that. And so, some places have the tradition and all that money just sort of flows in automatically. But I think we've seen all the excitement over Coach Prime and what it's done to the economy outside of sports. I don't think there's any reason not to expect that he could do that as well for football. But another comment I saw that kind of sparked me was I read an article, and I think it was mostly bogus and bullshit, but talking about how the Coach Prime camp, as they put it, asked for more NIL funds as part of the contract and got pushback from the CU administration. I don't believe that's accurate. I can't believe that the CU administration would not want to be competitive at that level, but at the end of the game, they're also a university. It's, they're not their primary job to raise money, but I think that the CU athletic department needs to become more proficient. They're not very good at raising money. But I don't know, what's going on in those contract talks between Coach Prime and the athletic department. But I have a hard time believing that CU doesn't understand the value of what he would be asking for there.
Yeah. What would you like me to comment on there? Because that's a lot to bite into. I guess I could just start running my mouth.
Yeah, that's what we do, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, like first off, we're going to separate football and basketball because they're in completely different situations in terms of support, in terms of competing in the Big 12 right now. What I would actually, though, say before moving on from separating those two sports is that the NIL support has drastically improved at Colorado in recent years. But yes, are you anywhere on the stratosphere of Oregon, Alabama, Ohio State? Keep going down the list of those programs. No. So you're going to lose out on recruits as a result of NIL budget from a football standpoint, or even basketball. And even basketball has improved their NIL as well. But the crazy thing there, William, is I know you don't follow basketball as closely, but they had to raise NIL funds to bring in guys like Elijah Malone, and Trevor Baskin and Andrei Yakimovsky, just to like now still not have any conference wins. So it's a real tough environment. But now going forward, it sounds like NIL is going to be kind of venturing into this new era where it's managed by the programs less so than by these collectives. And so you really don't have a solidified landscape of how this is going to look like for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But if you're a Colorado basketball fan, you want it to get as regulated as possible, because the way things are right now with the lack of support there, I don't care who your head coach is, it's going to be difficult. Now, it is part of the head coach's job to do that. And the reason that they even got an increase in NIL budget is because Tad Boyle was very active in that front. On the football side, Coach Prime, he's got a lot on his plate, obviously. It's more about his name and being able to kind of, as a department, maximize the success, going from 1 wins to 4 wins to 9 wins. I think that, again, the more it gets regulated, the better that is for CU. Now, the great thing is, and this is the important thing, and this is the point of NIL that, William, I think you and I can really agree on, is that there is still a currency that's not money, and it's a starting job at a Power 5 program. And it doesn't matter how much NIL the Oregons, Ohio States, Texas have, they still can only put 11 starters out there on the field, right? And so that's why you can get a Jaheim Otis from the transfer portal. And that's kind of where Colorado is. It's not as easy a runway to get to a national championship game or in the playoffs as these Ohio States, the Oregons, again, listing those programs off that have big NIL money. But you can get the right group of guys together and have a fantastic season. And there's going to be parity in college football as a result of the fact that there are just those 11 starting spots on both sides of the ball. But it is more challenging. It's not as easy as some of those programs that can just kind of outbid others to get them on campus. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, first of all those schools that you keep mentioning have all been in the top 10 for most of the last 10, 15 years, right? And so the memory of CU for the most part for young people right now is that we suck, right? And so this is the first year that we didn't suck. So I think it starts to change in that perspective. And I also know that, when CU won the national championship back in 1990, that then the money really started flowing in, from donors and stuff, and they built a new facility and all that kind of thing. So we finally got to 9 wins, and now we got to keep it at that level and move up. I think a lot of people are probably skeptical. A lot of people on our board say we're going to drop back to 6 or 7 wins. I don't think that's accurate, but Coach Prime has to prove that he can keep this up at that level, and when he does, then he'll win. But I also think that you could take all that money and go out and buy yourself the #1 class like Texas A&M did, and what the hell they do with it? Didn't do a damn thing, really, in my view. And part of that is because the guys that want the big paycheck aren't necessarily the guys that are going to help you win, because maybe they're in it for their own thing. They're not in it for the team. And we talked, at length in this podcast at the very start about that team chemistry and guys with hunger and buying in and what have you. You take a Jaheim Otis, for example, and that's a guy who's hungry to do something. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder and wants to prove it and wants to come and play for great football coaches. And I think he's going to get coached better here than he is at Alabama, believe it or not, because I think we got better defensive line coaches than they do. So that's an element of it. Jordan Seaton talked at great length about why he came here, and it wasn't necessarily about the money. There had to be some there, obviously, to make it competitive. But what he came here for was the relationship with Coach Prime, right? So I think that there's still a lot of the same things. And I got to tell you, I just got to look. If every asshole was out there for money, there wouldn't be anybody doing my job. There wouldn't be firefighters. There wouldn't be nurses. We're not all wired to just follow the biggest freaking wad of money some idiot hands out to us. Okay, most of us have other priorities and different, and it's not. And believe me, I'm not swimming in cash. Most of the people on the board got more. I'm living in this place, but you know, there are other things that are important to people than just money. Okay, and we are getting some of those guys and some of those things that are important to people help them be better players and better athletes and better teammates. So I think there are a lot of ways to appeal. Every kid out there has a different thing that's his primary thing, and part of the magic of any kind of recruiting or selling is finding what's important to that person. So I don't know. I think that as we keep having success, we'll have more NIL money available. And we're not going to get every guy out there that wants the most amount of money, but those aren't necessarily the guys we need. I think we're doing pretty well. I think our high school recruiting has been fantastic and will continue to be that way. And I think we're filling needs in the transfer portal pretty well so far. I don't know.
Well, Reggie Calhoun Jr. is now on board with CU, transitioning over from the 5430 Foundation to handle the NIL efforts within Colorado's program. And I'm anxious. I've got an interview scheduled with him, so I'm going to touch base there. I think, William, we butt heads a little bit on the NIL stuff, but I think at the core, we don't really fully disagree. It's just like, this program does need support, though, financially going forward.
Yeah, I don't think we're butting heads, really. I mean, I don't think we see there's a whole lot of differences. I just think that there's more to it than just money. I think it's incorrect to say, and I see this on our board all the time. Well, whoever has the biggest bag of money gets the player, and that's not the case. It is sometimes, sure, that's the way it is for some people, but I just think there's almost nothing simplistic in life. Most things are pretty complicated and have multiple causation, and if you want to give the head coach of the CU Buffs a free pass because he doesn't have enough NIL money, by all means, go ahead. But I think the responsibilities of a head coach are much broader than that. And I think that Coach Prime brings to the table everything he needs to do to be successful in that area. And yeah, we need to keep bringing in more resources and give him those resources. But I don't think it's just as simple as who gives the biggest bag. And I think the guys that only want the biggest bag are not the guys we want anyway, frankly.
Well, Coach Prime has been pretty vocal about that, right? Like he's all for player empowerment and support financially as much as they can provide it. But he doesn't want a kid showing up on campus that's not thinking NFL.
Right. You got to have that. I mean, at the end of the day, your primary motivation has got to be something besides that NIL money, or you won't be the right guy for this program.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of guys, like you mentioned, that are very talented coming in with this 2025 class. All but one are on campus from that early signing period. We are going to do our 2024 Colorado Buffaloes high school additions draft, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the offers going out early in the 2026, 2027, and 2028 classes on our next show. William, appreciate you and looking forward to recording this next show.
Okay, man. We'll have fun with it.
All right. And thanks everybody out there for tuning in.